Well, hello, everyone. I'm Mike McGlone with Bloomberg Intelligence. Excited to be contributing to this event. It's been a great listening, educational thing, and I'm happy to introduce my panel. We'll focus on Bitcoin as the name of the panel, but I don't necessarily know we'll actually focus on Bitcoin the whole time. I spot we will. And with that, you show the chart of Bitcoin, which is clearly moving from the upper left to the lower right. It's the annual chart. But my guests are Bhutoria of Castle Island Ventures, Marcus Swanepoel, co-founder of Luno, and David Ripley of Kraken. So I'm going to crack right into it and start with Ria. And Ria, my first thought is I want to do like a simple little intro of each person, and then we'll get into the discussion. What brought you from that bastion of wealth management in what Tom Keene calls the People's Republic of Massachusetts of Fidelity, to Castle Island Adventures, where you're just in the pulse of allocating money into, or I would say capital, into this cryptocurrency and digital asset space? What brought you there, and what do you see? I think you need to unmute yourself, Ria.
Sorry about that. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So I, prior to joining Castle Island, my entire career was in research in some capacity. So I started off as an equity research analyst covering fintech and payments. While I was in that role, I kind of fell down the crypto rabbit hole and realized that I needed to be doing this full time, because at one point I was spending every waking moment not working on my actual day job, just researching crypto. And really enjoyed my time doing research. And I feel like that's an incredible role to have, because you're essentially getting paid to learn and research. And eventually I got to a point where I wanted to apply that skill set, in a way, put my money where my mouth is, and actually start deploying capital into the space. And you know, I've looked up to the Castle Island team, the franchise they've built for a number of years, pretty much since I joined the space back in 2017, 2018. So when the opportunity came up to join the team, I jumped at it.
But I like what you mentioned about put your money. I remember when my first day of the Board of Trade, it was a sign. This is in Chicago. This is in the 80s. It said, "The ultimate seduction of other people's money." And I suspect you're involved with some of that too. Marcus, I want to go to you next. I love the headline of Luno, your company. It says, "We're upgrading the world to a better financial system." I want to get your feeling for that, just a quick outline, and your feeling for what I heard recently from the head of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, when he said he didn't care about cryptos. I thought, wow, there's a lot of people in the world who don't have anywhere near the privileges the people in us in this room have, are just gaining a better life through it. So tell me a little bit about yourself and about Luno and what that might mean here, and maybe your thoughts on what Mr. Dimon said.
Yeah, I think, look, unfortunately, a lot of the narrative around crypto, certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, has been around investing and in some cases speculation and even gambling, right? That's been tied into the movement a little bit. And I think when a lot of people say it's worthless or it's not going anywhere, those are the things that they remember and the things that they react to. But certainly in my case, having been brought up in Africa, spending most of my career working across Africa and Southeast Asia, one of the things that initially attracted me to crypto, and similar to Ria, I come from a finance background, and I've worked in retail banking and investment banking, all types of financial services, and it was looking at all these real problems that people were facing across all of these markets, and then looking at this technology and going, look, there's something about this being able to move value across the internet really easily that has a lot of potential to address a lot of these problems. I think where people get a bit stuck is everyone's saying, oh, but why can't it address all of those problems on Monday? And as we all know, these things don't, happen overnight. So if you take a 10 to 20 year view on the industry, and you're willing to not just look into the speculative / investment use cases, then the story becomes quite clear to a lot of people. And I think, maybe someone like Mr. Dimon doesn't unfortunately have the time and the luxury to kind of reflect on a lot of these things. But yeah, that's our view and how I basically got there.
So David, we're going to you. I look at Kraken as an ex-trader. It's like, oh man, that's so the things I see on you, and I don't trade, I can't anymore, but the things I see where I can do physical and hedge out of the money options and taking income and stuff. And I see Kraken as the center of, for someone like me who loves to try to find big in markets, is a cool place to be. But you didn't start there. You started at Gildera. Can you give us a little of the lay of the land, why you're there and what kind of things you're mainly focused on?
Yeah, sure. Again, thanks for having me, Mike. So, yeah, my path to crypto probably resonates or similar to a lot of folks in the space. And so I certainly had my rabbit hole moment, or actually probably a half-year period of going down the rabbit hole, where I too was a part-time researcher of the space and just absorbed and dove into everything possible. This was in 2013. And so I learned of Bitcoin around that time frame. And from an individual who came to be my co-founder, at the time in 2013, there weren't too many things you could do in crypto or in Bitcoin other than found a company. There weren't companies you could go join and do all these types of things. So that was my path. Again, similar to Marcus. And founded a company, Glidera, which was a little bit of a twist on exchange. We basically enabled all of the different Bitcoin and crypto wallets at the time, a mechanism to add buying and selling into their apps. We built, ran that company, grew it. Kraken happened to be one of our partners in the space, and it was in 2016, after a number of conversations with Jesse, the founder of Kraken, we decided to move forward with the acquisition. And so Glidera, my company, was actually acquired by Kraken, and that was the path that I took to join Kraken. And then, I joined as COO. It's certainly a drastically different company than when I joined. We were probably maybe not quite 100 people at the time, and we're pushing maybe close to 2,500 now. So it's definitely a different company. It's been an exciting 5 years.
Okay, what's good backgrounds, everyone? Thank you. I want to circle back to Ria. And Ria, the thing I think I'd love to get out of you is, I'm sure you can't dig into specific, is where you're seeing opportunities and where you're allocating capital. I sense that per pre-discussion, you're looking at other countries, developing markets. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and what you expect in this space per evolution in the next 2022?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you mentioned, one area that we're really excited about is companies that have expertise in local developing markets, like Luno, for example. Yellow Card is another example. Pinto is another example, that are building infrastructure that is for the most part built out in developing markets, but catering it to developing markets such as Africa, South Asia, South America. And that's something that we're really excited about, because I think the value of something like Bitcoin and digital assets more broadly is unique in these markets that are facing hardships in the form of inflation, currency devaluation, capital controls. There's a large amount of remittances flowing in and out of these countries, and they make up a significant portion of their relative GDP. So to the extent that crypto assets are able to kind of alleviate or provide optionality to citizens in these regions, that's really exciting to us, and we're excited about companies that are building infrastructure that facilitates that. I think Chainalysis actually recently published their Geography of Cryptocurrency report, and what they measure is not aggregate transaction volume across different markets, but grassroots adoption across different markets. And then they construct an index based on on-chain transaction value, and then P2P trading, and adjust it based on purchasing power parity per capita. And if you look at the list of the top 20 countries in that index, they all are mostly within Africa, South Asia, and South America. So this is definitely something that we're really excited about at Castle Island.
Thank you, Marcus. You want to piggyback on that a little bit? To me, the key thing that I think it's not widely known in this country amongst our leaders is the S part of ESG and cryptos. And I just hear about it, but I see it, and I see it from colleagues. Like I have a colleague from Zimbabwe. He say he loves Bitcoin. I wonder why. Talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing and what you're doing. What you're to make this, and also a little bit like we mentioned earlier. You're seeing some part of your, to me, represent part of this major fund of flows of capital coming into space, into your space.
Yes, for sure. I mean, look, we have on the ground operations in most of these markets: Nigeria, South Africa, Malaysia, Indonesia. So we get a lot of data on what people are doing and what they're using things for. I think that, there's definitely some really encouraging signs around, adoption. Certainly, we can see in our demographics and in our data that people are very quickly shifting from purely speculation and trading into more like treating it as like an asset and thinking of it as a long-term investment. We are seeing demographics shift to lower age groups very quickly. So interestingly, a couple of years ago, it was mostly people in their 30s and 40s that could afford to buy crypto that were buying it. And now it's, shifting to people in their early 20s. So that's happening. We, of course, do see people using it for transactions. It's still in the minority. I think that's also partly because, Bitcoin, because it appreciates so much so quickly, people tend to hold on to it. So I think with the introduction of stable coins and certain other things that are being built around on top of Ethereum and a few other interesting technologies, we'll see that start picking up as well. So we are seeing the first signs of it moving, away from this early speculation to asset class and then into transacting. Having said that, a lot of the users at the moment are still relatively the same type of people that you would get in developed markets. They live in cities, they have disposable income, they often speak English, or they're well educated. But like I said, the tipping point is starting to tip towards those other kind of use cases. So again, it's happening a little bit slower than what most crypto people wanted to happen, but also a lot faster than what most people outside of the crypto world actually believe it to be.
Dave, I want to transition to you. In a sense, I get from what Kraken's doing, and is what you're doing with the accessibility to the space and the efficiency you're helping provide. And I want to rope in a little bit with these exchange-traded ETFs, potentially the futures competing with what you provide on your platform. Tell us a little bit about where you think that's going and what Kraken's doing in the space, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kraken as a business, we, obviously we started as, a pure spot exchange, and we've absolutely built on and added a number of new products and features beyond that. I do think you're absolutely right. One of the things that we bring to the space is accessibility, a way for individuals, businesses, funds to get into crypto. Obtain crypto, buy crypto. I think, the business is largely in, the majority of our business actually comes from Europe. The U.S. is, U.S. North America is our next biggest market, and that's a big chunk of the business. So we do, lean towards, I guess, the developed markets. But one interesting thing that is actually a meaningful part of our business is partnering with a number of those businesses in the developing countries. They get their liquidity from Kraken in many instances. And so, that is much more, possible with crypto, right? That, these two exchanges, one in a developed country like Kraken, and then another in, developing part of the world, Latin America, Africa, and what have you, actually partner in that way. And so I think that's, another, interesting way that we indirectly support a lot of the developing market growth. And frankly, that's our mission, without a doubt, is to grow crypto globally, because we really see it as the best way out there to achieve this goal of financial inclusion.
What trips you up? What are you worried about? I want to transition to regulation and stablecoins, but since you mentioned it, what are you worried about?
Yeah, so it's interesting for Kraken. There are the most classic things that that are out there, right? I'd go for the first one is security, actually, right? It's we sit on about 40 billion in assets right now. Most of it's crypto, small fraction of it is fiat, and that's a significant responsibility. We invest an enormous amount in security. Our security team's pushing 100 team members right now. And so that's really a meaningful part of the business. And I would say, number one on the list. We think of all the risks, it's the one that we've invested the most heavily against, and the one that we're, have the most kind of like control over, which is great. I mean, I think, regulatory is an interesting one. Yeah, it's out there. I think we see regulators in the U.S., in Europe, in all the parts across the world. We're licensed in a bunch of different geographies and registered, taking different steps with regulation. I think, one of the things that, becomes much more interesting, not just crypto, but, even the internet generally, is, we're starting to see competition among regulators and governments in a way that, we didn't see many years ago. And that's one thing that, crypto, I think, is enabling. And so, as different regulators and governments kind of jockey for position in the global economy, I think it kind of sets up for, a beneficial dynamic, in the right dynamic, for governments and regulators to ideally support innovation in technologies like crypto.
Yeah, I want to transition to similar question, similar topic, and I'm happy to go wherever you want. To me, the key thing about next year is going to be regulation. I think it's going to focus mostly on crypto dollars, which to me is just it's an evolution that's going to compete clearly with euro dollars. And here you show that massive increase in crypto dollars. People talk about Tether, and they're like, yeah, Tether's just one. There's a dozen of them. What do you see for risks? And my sense is what I'm seeing organically, most notably in non-U.S. countries, people wanting to get access to the buck. I mean, they're not going to yuan. You probably see that in your focus. But what do you see as potentially where that's going? And the quote I heard earlier, I think Michael Saylor says it's either going to zero or it's going for 120 billion to add a couple zeros in the next few years. Give me your outlook. What do you think? And the key thing I want to get out of all of us is potential for regulation, potential for U.S. to mess up, which I think is unlikely, and the bumps in the road we should investors expect next year, which of course was kind of a tough question.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm happy to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant for Allie. I'm sorry for Ria on that one. I meant for Ria. But go, David, if you have one thought, why don't you finish that, and then Ria will go to you.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, I absolutely agree, Mike. Regulation is going to increase. It's going to increase. I mean, I do think there's ideally a way to do it the right way, and a way to do it the wrong way for crypto. And so we absolutely see it across the board.
Ria,
yeah,
your shot.
I agree. I definitely agree with David. I think, one thing that's significantly different about the industry now versus maybe a few years ago is the amount of dialogue that crypto companies are having with regulators. The fact that, institutions like Kraken, Avanti are actually already being regulated as banks, or have divisions that are regulated as banks. And then you have, institutions like Coinbase, which went public and have the capital to, lobby and vocalize, what this industry needs. And I think that you are seeing more and more regulators in the U.S., outside of the U.S., understand that there is a right and a wrong way to regulate this industry. And I think that regulators are putting in the work to understand what is the right way of regulating this industry. It definitely won't, not everybody will be converted overnight, but to see the forces growing every single day in and out of the industry, and just, with the rise in value of the industry as a whole, having the capital to deploy to have conversations with regulators and teach them about the right way to regulate this industry is really exciting. So I think, regulation, the right type of regulation is good and provides certainty and clarity for businesses that are operating in this industry. It's just making sure that that right regulation is implemented.
Marcus, I feel you're at the tip of that evolution, and once this is properly regulated, I think we're going to look back at this from the future, and you're in a key place to make the world a better place by helping lift people out of poverty, and that's what I'm seeing. But your thoughts on that concept and kind of my optimistic view for what you're doing in the space. And it's good to make money too.
No, look, I mean, I think regulation, we all agree it's important. It's something that we're gonna, we all want to happen. I mean, we've been working closely with most of these regulators around the world for about 7 or 8 years now. So we know what they think. I might have a slightly different view here in the sense that generally speaking, we found that regulators have been really pragmatic about it. They could have banned it. Most regulators, they didn't. They're still trying to come to grips with it a little bit. The people who've really been de facto regulating the industry over the last few years has been the banks, because it's most crypto companies need some bank account to be able to operate. You could say, well, now a lot of companies that do NFTs and DeFi don't need it. Well, they do still need it because they need the on-ramps. They need people to come to us or Kraken to buy the crypto to then send to use those things. And so the banks have put a lot of criteria in place saying you need to do X, Y, Z in the absence of regulation, if you're lucky enough to even get a bank to do that. And the banks obviously have very different incentives. They are very risk averse. You've seen a lot of fines and that they've had over the last few years. And unfortunately, that risk hasn't really gone away. So even though, of course, regulation is important, we're going to see that increase a lot. I would say there's still this overhang of banks making their own decisions. We've had countries where there is full regulation in place and we have regulated legal entities, and the banks are still too scared to move into this space because of whether it's reputational risk or they just don't have the resources to manage this risk. So I think that's gonna the bank's gonna play a key be a key player in this. And if I had to maybe just say one more thing about what keeps me up at night, which is related to this, but the level of misinformation and low level of education around crypto is absolutely astounding still, right? So for a lot of people who've kind of gone down the rabbit hole, you just think everyone gets it now, come on, how hard can it be, and so on. But how that manifests itself in real life is not just with consumers and getting more people to use it, but all you need is one person on a bank's risk committee or at a regulator, on a committee that needs to make a decision, that read some article about Bitcoin mining being bad for the environment, or they saw some Facebook post about money laundering and crypto, which was just clickbait. And that thing takes such a strong emotional hold inside that discussion that you have these institutions that are actually relatively neutral / pro Bitcoin or crypto, but then you have some individuals that are so emotionally, against it and often based on quite ill-informed data points. And that friction makes it very hard for everyone to move forward. So I think just education and a basic level of education for everyone around, everything, the reality, the pros and the cons of it. I think that's incredibly important. And sometimes I feel the industry, we've moved along a little bit too quickly, just assuming that everyone's on the same page. And definitely most people are not.
Well,
I just want to piggyback.
Go ahead, man. Shoot.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what Marcus is saying. I think that's such an important point, and that applies to regulators. It applies to financial institutions that are banking this industry, and it also applies all the way down to boots on the ground, especially in developing markets, individuals that don't have access to the same level of education, information that we do in developing markets about this space. And, as a part of our deep dive into Africa, as we were, evaluating the yellow card opportunity, we did interviews with different employees in countries like Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, Kenya, and we found that the biggest risk that they face is individuals that they're hoping to onboard as users that have been burned in some kind of scam, Ponzi scheme that completely taints their whole view of all crypto assets. So I think that is the lack of education applies, all the way from the top to the bottom as a big risk that we need to address.
So awesome. Thank you for that. We have 3 minutes left. I think, Ria, I might have to leave that with your last remarks. I have a little bit of time for Dave and Marcus. And I want to split completely the Bitcoin. What I saw happen, we all saw happen with this recent launch in ETF. I look at that as that's a massive opening up of the cash and carry trade where, the futures restrictions where it's only 3-to-1 leverage. I'm used to 21. I'm from futures. Are going to open up and the world's going to say, hey, I can get almost free collateral, holding Bitcoin, selling them on a futures and hedging it in a hedge fund 5-to-1. That's question. That's what I see happening. Marcus, let's go to you on that thought. And where do you think we're going with that?
Look, I mean, it opens, any instrument like that opens itself up to all kinds of layering on top of that. So I think, without going too much into the specifics, I think it's setting it's building like a platform for additional innovation to happen on top of it. I would argue that a lot of the innovation is probably going to just mimic existing financial markets, and it's not necessarily going to make a big difference at the crypto layer. But what it does do is it increases adoption. It probably is going to have a positive effect on the price. And the more people that get involved in it one way or another, the better. So I think there's, these feedback loops are going to, indirectly lead to more adoption and more people using it. I hope. So I think it's very positive.
Dave, we've got 2 minutes. It's all yours.
Yeah. I agree with Marcus. This is, it's an initial step for a lot of individuals to get into the space, and it's that much lower of a barrier for many individuals to go and purchase an ETF from their brokerage account. So I do think there's like a meaningful, retail play in addition to. One of the groups of customers that we serve quite substantially are more kind of like active traders, prosumers, that group who will absolutely engage in some of the trades that you mentioned, Mike. Looking to find an arbitrage against the futures versus versus the spot markets, as well. And so I think, while it's, we can say it's, not the same as like actually, purchasing Bitcoin, downloading it to your own, hardware wallet, holding your own keys, all of those various different types of things, it's still a step in the right direction. To the extent that people have exposure to crypto, they, move down that path of gaining more education in the space. These are all positive things. And, the second step for them, or the third step or fourth step could very well be to actually, own Bitcoin and then potentially Ethereum, hold their own keys, and all those things could certainly come in line following that first step.
Well, your timing is perfect. I just love what's happening in this world right now where it's been completely banned in China, and these bastions of capitalism in Europe and Canada and US are launching futures and ETFs and saying, okay, well, fine, you ban it. We'll just adopt the new technology and good luck with that one. So I'm just curious how it's going to all work out. But I see this digital Cold War developing, and you're right in the center of it, and it's going the right way. With that, we've got exactly 6 seconds left, so we nailed it. Appreciate your contributions, really appreciate your comments, and we pass it back to the moderator. Thank you.